Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. I hope everyone is having a great Monday. And we have Agnieszka Wood on from the Trading Mindset Coach for us. She is from a head coach, excuse me, I said that incorrectly. Agnieszka, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It really, this whole talk of ours about turkeys made me really hungry.
I know that is the problem with Thanksgiving with me. I get so excited to talk about the meal that it gets me hungry to do it. But I'm okay for that because I do a test turkey every year, and I did that the
Oh,
other day, so I can go down and I will have a turkey sandwich for lunch today. So I'm
oh my
ready to
God,
go. I'm ready.
that sounds amazing.
Well, I'm so happy you're here today because I have a couple of subjects that I want to ask you to talk about a little bit. And the first one is I was going back through your free trading mindset tips. And again, there is a QR code directly below Agnieszka on the screen there to get her free trading mindset tips. They are fantastic. And I was looking at number 13, which is how to move on after losing a lot of money because I have found that this is the biggest problem that most traders run into, and they don't realize they run into it. So my first question is, do you find that I notice that a lot of people, after they lose money, they tell you about it, you hear them talk about stuff, you see the change in their trading, but they don't see the change in their trading.
Yeah, it definitely makes a big impact because just like, with every other life experience, loss is not something that people like to have to start with. And taking a distance from something you lost, especially if it's a lot of money, it's simply not easy. So it influences you, it kind of drags you, pulls you into that state of mind, but also emotional state of sadness, of um, regret, but also, which is even more impactful, shame,
Right?
because
Yeah,
you feel really ashamed that you allowed yourself to do that. Like,
absolutely.
how can I make this, like, how did I make this happen, right? What's wrong with me? And a lot of times guilt, especially if you are trading money in your account that you have. Sometimes people take their savings that they have together with their spouse, they put it in their account, and then they feel guilty
Right?
that, like, I can't do that, I cannot lose it, but then it happens. So there's a lot of this negative emotional load, which definitely sits there somewhere at the back of the head every time you make a next trade and you think about it. And what it does is you start trying to avoid losing more.
Right.
And when you trade with that state of mind of, like, I cannot lose more, that's where your focus goes, and that's what actually happens,
Happens,
right?
right? Because then what happens is the second, you almost forget how a trade works in my mind. In other words, the second that you didn't get that, unless you scalp the absolute bottom of a trade and then sell it on a straight line to the top, what I find is after a loss, I'm much more jumpy. Oh, I was wrong again. Let me get out of this. And I think that's the misnomer that people don't realize is what I have seen happen to a lot of traders and how they've crashed out, so to speak, is they get a big loss. It's not followed by another big loss. What it's followed by is 50 small losses.
Right.
And
Yeah, the
that's what
paper
brings them
cuts,
down.
right? Yeah, the paper cuts, because you're just trying to avoid it and you're scared. So you're trading scared. And that's never a good recipe for trading, because
Right.
if you're trading scared, it's actually you connect your trade to the previous trade, and then the previous trade to
Yeah.
yesterday, and to all this past trades. And instead of looking at every single trade as a separate probability, as a separate event,
Right.
which it is, because it's only in our head that we say, okay, like, just just think about it. If you have had five good trades, you already feel much more confident that probably the next one will be winning, right?
Right. Oh, you
And
without
the
a
same
doubt.
way when you have losing trades, that's the same thing, which is completely false, because they have nothing to do with the next trade.
Right. That's what we get. That's what I try to get across to people. Is exactly that. And those are the times for me that you need to reset, so to speak. You need to do the
Right.
other techniques that we've talked about on our segments here, which is separating and starting a day anew, sort of separating yourself from yesterday's wins or losses, because both of them can influence incorrectly or cause issues with your trading the next day.
Right.
To do that. So, I do think that's important. I have to ask, is there any difference dealing with that in a sort of top blow off like we see in the market right now? Because you also feel that everybody's winning but you. Does it exasperate the problem sometimes in a market like we're in now?
Um, well, I think it depends a little bit on where you are with your account and with your position, on
Makes
the way
sense.
up.
Right, right, makes sense.
Because a lot of times it's like even when the market is going up, you might have been losing, and that makes it even worse for you because now you feel you're missing. So there's just a lot of emotions in general. But I don't know if the like. So what you're asking is if the market. Can you say the question again one
Sure,
more
I was
time?
just asking in a market that's going all, up like it is right now in general. So you're hearing all the success stories. Someone who
Right.
bought Carvana now up 100%, someone who bought MicroStrategy up 100%. And then you have your loss. Does it sort of even make it more difficult to take because there is all
Right.
this positivity across, you read social media right now, everybody's posting their wins and, everything else.
Yeah. So I think it might contribute to even more confidence on your side to start, because when you have lost the money, you see everything going up and you see everyone making money.
Right.
Instead of profiting on the opportunities that are actually there, the mindset is I need to make my loss back. So
Yeah.
instead of looking,
That's why I was asking, because that's what I think that we
yeah,
fall into that trap. And
yeah,
we then again, what we do is we manifest it into a loss almost because
yeah.
we're pushing ourselves into it as opposed to allowing it to happen naturally.
Yeah, because even though it might sound like positive, I need to make my loss back. Still, it's pulling you back to the past, right? To the
Right.
past experiences. So on a subconscious level, it still gets those negative emotions up and running within your system, within your brain, within your emotions. And then when things are going up, you might be actually more prone to oversizing,
Right.
right? and
Right.
then and then it's just like, first of all, you increase your risk, but then when the thing just turns a little bit, now you're getting scared
And you
because your
panic.
mind is in the back, at the like in the
Yeah.
past. I cannot lose more, but you have just loaded up on your shares, and
Yeah,
suddenly
no,
risk.
and I know exactly what you're saying. I just had to stop myself from doing something similar where it's not that I'm losing. I've had this good trade, but I was looking at my sort of diversification right now on my, scalp account, and I'm like, whoa, I am way too far overweight to this one part of a sector that just I don't feel comfortable being. And I was getting ready to add to it, and I had to stop myself. So I think that's why I asked, because I think that, and it's not that I'm trying to play catch up, but I see it without that external influence, and I could see how it would be very simple right now if you feel, and it's FOMO, right? You feel like you've
Right.
missed out on the Carvana trade, and then you're like, nope, it's someone goes on CNBC and they say, no, I've got a new target, and it's 20% above where it is now. So now you convince yourself I'm going in, and you even put
Yeah.
more pressure on yourself and you enter at the wrong
Yeah.
time and manifest
Yeah.
that issue.
And totally. And I think important is to notice what do you say to yourself, because yes, the market is going up, but it doesn't mean that there will be no pullbacks. There's a lot of stocks that are extended. And now the question is like, can you still manage the risk within your parameters, or will you be just blindly looking at every pullback. It's like, oh, I need to get, now it's pulling back. I know it's going to go up. Let me just get that pullback. Because
Right.
really, is it a pullback or is it something that you talk yourself into because you want to make that loss back? And
Right,
that's, I think,
absolutely. You think that it's
you know,
over. And exactly what you're saying is playing out for me and something that I'm in right now. And I see these things. And that's what it is, I will say as a trader, what starts to happen and what I've noticed in through your systems that I've put in place for myself is that I am getting myself into a more awareness about
yeah,
my trading, where my mind is, or my psyche. Am I in a good place, a bad place? Am I being faked out by the mainstream media news? It's so hard, because I'm watching this stuff all day, all night, getting ready to do these shows, that it's easy to fall for the hype, so to speak.
yeah,
But that's
totally.
why I keep stressing to everybody about how important and why they should start off with your free trading mindset tips and then move on to your coaching. Is that it's very hard even for seasoned investors. I just had on the CEO of the Blue Collar Investor, who has been doing his strategy for 38 years, and he said to me how, after we were talking, and he said, because I was complimenting him because he has a system that really, what he does, and I think that you are of the same way, is he figures out his contingency plans. I'm buying stock X. If it goes up this way, this is what I plan to do with it. If it goes down this way, this is what I plan to do with it. And it's the right way to trade. And, as we've talked, I know you do that with your own trades. And, he's made it clear that it's kind of hard right now. It's hard to disconnect from all these inputs that we have coming in,
Yeah,
and stay grounded to those systems.
yeah, totally. And I think there's always a little bit of that, like, okay, so this is what I agreed with myself. This is my plan, and I want to stay in integrity, but I also want to capitalize on all these opportunities, right?
Right.
You can be in everything, of course, and like you have to still keep in mind you just don't know if it will keep going up, right? So what is that golden middle where you can be still in integrity with yourself and not beat yourself up if things will turn around, and not say, oh, I should have done this, oh, I should have done that.
Right.
Yeah, because that's where it starts eating on you and triggers all kinds of sabotaging behaviors like revenge trading, or wishing that things would have been different while they're not.
I've
And
never heard that term. I don't think. I love it. Revenge trade. That is a new one. I think we need to get shirts made up for that. I love
really,
it. Don't revenge trade. I love that. I'm gonna give
so,
myself a note.
oh my goodness,
I'm going to use that
yeah.
in the future. I'm going to use that one. I'm stealing that from you, Agnieszka. I'm sorry.
I don't think it's I'm not, I cannot coin it because the revenge trading is, yeah, I've heard it before, so that's definitely not my term. Um, but yeah, and it's, I try to stay as much as I can within my integrity. If I have a plan and I say this is my target, I know that I have put some work into it to actually define the target, right?
Right.
So if I see that the market is raging bull and there's no tomorrow, everyone is buying, and I'm like, okay, so let me see what I will be happy with. So let me take part off, or at least put a stop at the target where I say, this is where I wanted to take it off, and then see how far it goes, right? But if I just simply hope for the best, I
Right.
will regret it later if it
Yeah.
turns
Hope is
around.
never a trading. Is never
Yeah,
part. It should never be
yeah,
part of your trading thesis.
yeah. And
Um.
it's kind of built in that way, builds integrity, but it also builds confidence that I will do what I say that I do. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's the biggest problem with following the plan. That whole hoping, wishing, and yeah, coming back to the losses. Like if you just look back and see how many times that got you in trouble, it's kind of simple. Like it's better to follow your plan than to not.
That's without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah. No. I mean
Right?
that is the key. Um. but it's harder to do than it's harder to do than you would think sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's why, like I have so many traders to do that,
Yeah,
because that's like the most discipline and consistency is the biggest two challenges. And I don't think just in trading, but in general. That's why it's also so challenging in trading. And I think the before you start improving anything, it's just like, before you start a new relationship, and I think we talked about it at some point, just make sure you're really done with your previous one. So if
that's
you
right.
still
Yeah,
have that backlog of, I'm like, if you hear yourself saying, I need to make my losses back, or there is part of you that is feeling that, like, oh, I feel so ashamed that I lost it. It's like you did not give it a place yet. You don't have peace with it. You are still dealing with emotions that are so intense and heavy that there is just no other way, that they will influence your next trade. So
yeah,
resetting, and actually in my program, the very first step before we start with anything else, I have this whole thing dedicated to that step: resetting. Let's just reset. Start with tabula rasa, that we know, okay, past is the past. I know I've made mistake, and I know I'm not stupid, and I have a bigger fish to fry than trying to, digging into this negative feelings and everything that happens. You
sure.
cannot bring that back. It's like the money is gone. The market doesn't give you insurance. If you make the money, it's not the money that you lost. You will be getting different money, right?
Yeah.
So there is really no point to trying to hope.
Sure. One other thing that I was reading that you have in your training guides is about learning or looking at it as making sure that you're concentrating on the process of your trade versus the
Right.
profit of your trade. And I thought that was a really impactful comment that you had. I actually wrote it on my sheet here because I thought that that one was really important. I don't know that a lot of people do that. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean there?
Yeah. So let me use a little bit of analogy. So if you want to climb a mountain and you have that goal, like, I want to be there, you cannot teleport yourself right there. Yes, you will look up when you climb that mountain from time to time, but really what you need to focus on is what's under your feet, right?
Yes.
You have to focus on every step, because otherwise you might break your ankle, never make it. Or sometimes you might notice that actually, if you look down, that there is the road is gone and you have to take a detour. Like, there's so many different things that you have to take care of, also about your hydration, also about your clothing, and like, you have to take care of yourself on the way up there. And all that is included in the trading process. So if you can commit to every step of your process, eventually you will end up at that result you want.
Yeah.
If you have a sound strategy that tells you, okay, if you follow this, this is what's going to be the result. And the nice thing about trading is, you can make mistakes on the way. You
Right.
don't have to go there in a straight line. You can actually make mistakes. It's allowed. So you have those moments of rest where you say, you know what? Okay, I can just sit now and be on the sideline, and I know I will still make it to
Right.
the top.
Yeah.
But without, like, if you just keep concentrating on the money, um, yeah, you break a leg sooner or later.
Right. You get lost in the forest is the way I look at it. You know what I mean? Is
Yeah,
you end up
yeah,
wandering the forest in circles if that's all you look
yeah,
for is that and you don't work on the processes that get you there. And
right.
again, it's something that I'm noticing, it's funny too in talking to all of these educators and coaches is that I'm seeing certain themes that permeate through all of your guys coaching that is similar. And like that's another one that I've seen talked about with other coaches, with everybody else is about following your process, having your process and
Yeah,
focusing on your process, not your profits, and that it allows you to do it because it also opens you up sometimes if you're more concerned about the process. You also tend to have a more open view of the chart is what I sort of say.
Right.
You actually
Right.
see it a little bit better because, we sometimes, again, we look at a chart from the trade that we're in as opposed to from where really is it in that world.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to make that connection. So I really liked that line itself. Again, working on the process, not the profit. The profit's going to come
Yeah.
if you get your processes in line.
Exactly. And I think you really hit the really good spot here that, focusing on the like not every trade has to be is gonna make you or break you. And I think the moment that you focus on every like on the result, this is what follows. That everyone is like focused on every single trade that this has to work, that they forget about the bigger picture. It's really about the bigger picture. And this is also what the consistency is about. It's
Right.
not about winning every fight, right? To win
Yeah.
the war, so to say. It's about allocating your resources, making sure that you are going in a steady movement forward instead of going like this, because
Yeah.
that's not, you cannot have consistency if you're constantly all over the place. So having that focus on the process actually automatically puts you in that perspective of sort of, I call it, like the third chair, like the observer, and
Yeah.
saying, okay, how is this whole process developing? And is this trade like actually damaging my whole account, or shall I cut it? Shall I keep it? Like what, like you are more a manager of your investment, so to say, even if it's just short term, than just being like in the middle of the action, like, oh my God, what's
Right.
happening? It's like, what? You cannot really manage
No, and
anything.
that's important, like you said. Like I was saying earlier about what I did today, I was in not the heat of the moment, so to speak, but you're in there and you're seeing things, and I'm like, I went to hit a button. I said, wait a second, if I do that, I've got like 80% of what I am in this one little basket. It's not all in the same company, but these four companies are all going to move one way based upon Bitcoin. So if I don't have this right, then there isn't going to
Yeah,
be a recovery because I haven't given myself another avenue. So
yeah,
stepping back and looking at that is hard to do, and sometimes you don't realize that you need it. Like I didn't go into that saying, "Wait a second, let me take a step back and see it." It just that
yeah,
sort of what happens though is I think you get that little bit of a sixth sense, like you talk about, and an alarm was going off in the back that was saying, "Hold it a
right.
second, before you hit that button. Let's think about that." Um,
Yeah, you get that sixth sense by indeed developing your awareness, and it's almost impossible not to, because the more you develop your awareness, the more intuitive it becomes, and then it feels
right?
almost like sixth sense,
Yeah.
that you have that awareness all the time. But it is, yeah, at first you have to develop. I actually had a very interesting conversation with my husband, because i I notice a lot. I'm very visual to start with, but I notice always a lot. And I said to him, it's like, I wonder how that would be to be in your skin for a few days and actually notice, see what you are noticing, because it's not like he doesn't notice a lot, but he notices the different things. And I'm
Sure.
like, how would that be to see the different perception? And if you are trading the market, but you are not able to step away, that's something that you can practice. Like stepping away from your consciousness and from your awareness and say, let me just look, see what is happening, instead of having the tunnel vision on something, right?
Yeah.
Just building this peripheral view, so to say, that you're
Yeah.
just kind of noticing more and sensing more.
Putting that into my background in the restaurant business, we call it restaurant blinders. When you own or work in a restaurant for too long, a lot of times you don't notice certain things, like maybe the station's getting cluttered, or behind the bar, this is
Yeah,
getting there because you see it go one bottle at a time, so to speak, and you don't notice that what the mess is happening or the stuff. And I
right,
had a great
right.
manager that I worked for who said, "Hey, listen, you got to take off those restaurant blinders. Take a step back and look at it like a customer. So sometimes,
Right.
look at it, and that's something that I haven't done recently that you're making. I'm making myself a note. Is a lot of times when I had some of my most successful periods in trading, it's because I would spend some time to look at the contrarian view. Is,
Yeah.
that old, I never got to the point where people turn that chart upside down and say, now what would you trade? I've never really done that. But where I start to say, okay, if my view wasn't that the world's always going up, and I'm saying,
Right.
like I am now with Bitcoin, I've been very clear at 100, I think we get a pullback. And, that's what I think is okay. Now that if I don't have that view, I'm having to look at the contrarian because maybe I am wrong. It's holding up really well in this area, and it might give
Yeah.
enough breathing room for it to get that jump that it needs to break through and blow
Right.
through that. So I do think it's important sometimes to look at the other side, right, of what
It,
that trade
totally.
is.
Totally. Actually, it's really interesting because we take our thinking abilities for granted, but there are even different type of thinking methods that help you do those things. And in most cases, people are just using two. They either see things just from their own perspective, but they don't allow any other views. And some people are more flexible and they actually say, okay, there are other views except for mine, and they kind of broaden their perspective. But just take, for example, creative thinking. That's a lot of
Right?
companies are using creative thinking, marketing departments, right?
Sure.
Because it gives them different perspective. And one of those type of thinking is taking that view of sort of advocate of the devil. Like,
Yeah.
what if? Like, what if I'm wrong? What if things will go wrong? What can go wrong? How can I look at things in a different way? So you switch your perspectives to see, like, if I wasn't emotionally invested in this trade, what
Right.
would I be thinking? Because
Yeah,
it
no, it's
changes
true. Like we
completely.
said, we get too emotional sometimes on our trades, and it's the same way I was talking, like I said, with Dr. Ellman about, and you see people sometimes I call going back to the well too often. In other words, I had success with Carvana in
Yeah,
October and in June, so I'm going to buy it
yeah,
today. And they don't really
right,
look at it and say, you know what? It just made, it's at the top of a 20%, push up,
right,
and I need to wait for that pullback, or it's not a good entry spot, or they have earnings coming up in 2 days, and I probably should have waited till after earnings to make this decision. So, it is
yeah,
tough, and then we
yeah.
have the holidays, so everybody's got more pressure, right? Do you see that a little bit too? As we get towards the end of the year, everybody wants to say, hey, I did this year. I finished up X amount. I see a lot of people, and I will start to warn people. One of the things I'll talk more about is, we've talked about not having, having goals are okay, but I don't like that sort of philosophy. Is I made my $1,000 and I'm going to stop trading today no matter what. It should
Right,
be
right,
based on
right.
more. And the same way I worry about people that are chasing year end goals, as we get into the last month of the
Of
year,
course.
and how that influences. So I might have you giving you a little forewarning that over the next couple of weeks, I might ask you a little bit more about how
Sure.
do we keep that in check? How do we look for that? How do we notice if we're doing that? And
Right.
maybe how do we avoid that?
Yeah. One thing that just to finish up that emotional connection to the trade, and maybe you have heard it before, the fear and greed are, of course, the biggest emotions, right? Fear and
Yeah,
greed. But how it changes uh, depending on whether you are in the trade or not. It's like before you're in a trade, you're looking at the chart, and you will often hear it from people who are not trading, who kind of try to give you, like, look at the chart and you tell them something like, oh yeah, that's easy, you go in here, and then when it goes down, you get out, right? Because you get fearful. So if it goes against you, you get out. But then when it goes your way, you hope that it's going to go higher.
right.
Logical, right?
Yeah,
But then you are getting in the trade, and those two emotions completely flip. Now the trade goes against you, and instead of getting fearful and get out, you're getting hopeful that it's going to turn around. Now, when it goes your way, instead of being hopeful, you just get fearful that it's not going to go higher and you want to get out. So it's just
exactly.
this
You work
complete
against
flip.
yourself twice. You've got
Yes,
to fight yourself on two different occasions.
yeah.
And it's
You kind
true.
of fight your humanity.
Yeah, no, it makes it hard. Well,
Yes.
Agnieszka, I am going to let you leave. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Are you back on Wednesday? Are you around town?
Yes, I will be on Wednesday here. Yes, still,
Perfect. Then we are going to take you up on that
baking my
offer.
cake.
And I want to know how the meringue cake is coming out. I'll let you know how all my stuff is coming out.
That's
Quasar
awesome.
Markets, we will see you back at 1 o'clock with Scott Bauer, and then again back on Wednesday at noon with Agnieszka. Again, thank you so much, Agnieszka.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me, Howard. Bye.